Formula 1 is a sport that is perhaps best suited for video games, and F122 is as close as any of us will ever get to racing at Silverstone. Hi folks, Mike Finnerty here, gaming editor and critic of entertainment.ie. Here's our review of F122 for PlayStation 5. Codemasters are veterans of the racing game, with their heritage stretching all the way back to the Colin McRae games back in the 90s, and they are to the racing game what Martin Scorsese is to the crime film. When you see the Codemasters logo before booting up a game, you know you're in good hands, and F122 is no exception. Players now have the chance to race around the Miami International Aerodrome, and the Spanish, Australian and Abu Dhabi circuits have been tweaked to make them more accurately reflect the real tracks drivers have to face. Sprint races have also been added to the game, which reflects them being added to the sport last year, and they're just as thrilling on the virtual track as in real life. For players who want the warts and all experience, pit stop errors are now in the game, meaning that players can now blame the pit crew for finishing half a second behind the winner, just like in real life. The simulation mode is no joke, it is probably as difficult as operating a real life Formula 1 car. Going from the lower, more gamey difficulty levels to the full-fledged simulation mode is like going from learning chords on the acoustic guitar to playing a Megadeth solo on a 12-string guitar. On the lower difficulty levels, players can play with plentiful assistance that will automatically slow them down at corners, manage gear navigation, and automatically balance the car. If you haven't played the games in a while, or are new to the series, we would recommend playing on those difficulties first, until you get used to it. While you can go incredibly, ludicrously fast, don't expect arcade action while on the track. The game can and will punish you for showboating, cutting corners and acting like a general jackass towards fellow drivers, but fans of the sport will know this. The game has those jackasses in mind, and to facilitate those who simply want to look at the gorgeous cars and still have a good time, the game has some more arcade elements. Players can zip around tracks, and are tasked with maintaining a high speed in a fleet of luxury supercars in the game's hot lap modes. The majority of the game is dedicated to Formula 1 racing with all the rules that come with it, so don't expect a burnout style game. With that said, the game falls down in one major area. There is a lack of tutorials to explain the different elements. Granted, people who pick up a game based on Formula 1 know the score and how the cars work, but for a game that prides itself on being the ultimate Formula 1 experience and looking to possibly convert fans, it doesn't do a very good job of explaining the different mechanics and elements. The HUD has plenty of indicators, but someone without a knowledge of the sport wouldn't know what they mean necessarily. In other EA sports games such as the FIFA and Madden games, there is a decent effort to introduce new players to the mechanics, but F122 assumes players are already on board. That aside, and assuming you're a serious veteran, it still hasn't fixed a fairly major problem. You cannot switch cameras mid-race. Instead of pretty much every racing game released in the last 20 years, you can't hit a button to change the view of your car. You have to pause the race and change it in the menu. For a game that lives and dies on these exciting moments, breaking up the action mid-flow so you can fiddle around with the camera settings is an absolute immersion killer. It's a shame that the game gets 95% of the details right and falls down as something as basic as the camera. Another fairly substantial niggle comes in the game's career mode, and it has the same EA illusion of choice of giving players the chance to choose different dialogue options, and doesn't have a major, if any, effect on gameplay. The career mode is fairly in debt, but last year's story mode doesn't make a return. Once again, the game gives you a sliver of choice insofar as choosing what tyres you use, making sure your co-driver gets enough support, or making the right financial decisions, but those choices aren't as impactful as the game would have you believe. Get that Telltale Games nonsense out of my racing game, EA! In spite of these fairly major flaws, the moment-to-moment gameplay is exhilarating, and when F122 is good, there is no better pure racing experience on the market. Other games like the Forza series or Gran Turismo offer very specific versions of racing fun, but F122 is more distilled and more primal. The trials and tribulations with Formula 1 are perfectly captured here, and Codemasters are the best developers working today that are able to replicate the heat of the moment associated with making cars go really, really fast. Codemasters joined the EA camp will be cause for concern, considering how so many other developers joined the team only to get swallowed up by EA, but Codemasters' quality and experience with racing games shines true here. Overall, the game is a treat for fans of Formula 1, and is the next best thing to shelling out for lessons and dedicating years of practice to getting behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content, and be sure to throw us a follow on our Instagram account, EntGaming, for more content. And be sure to head over to entertainment.ie/gaming for more gaming news.